attending today's webinar, The Future of Network Automation for Tier 2, 3 Service Providers, sponsored by Juniper Networks. Before we begin, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of the screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green resource list widget. Near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I'd now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Senior Principal Analyst, Sterling Perrin.
Thanks. Hello, and welcome everybody to today's webinar sponsored by Juniper Networks, a future of network automation for Tier 2, Tier 3 service providers. Really an exciting webinar that is the culmination of a large project that we embarked on with Juniper several months back. And it was a survey-based project, actually one of the largest surveys we've ever done. And we'll do a readout today, and I'll be joined in helping me with the presentation and also a great help throughout the survey project. Kevin Landry is joining me. He's Senior Product Marketing Manager with Juniper Networks. Hi, Kevin. Welcome, and I will let you give a little bit of an overview of the project itself, but welcome to today's webinar.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sterling. Yeah. So, who am I? I just wanted to mention that, and Sterling and I were just talking about this. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I started my career always in network management and network automation. So I started as a software designer, designing these systems, and finally went into deployment type of for OSS roles, and then moved myself into partnership integration roles, and slowly went into marketing, where I've been there since the evolution of network management towards SDN for the WAN, as well as intent-based networking towards network automation, and that's where we are today. And I'm excited to tell you that I'm heading up a new role at Juniper Networks in product marketing, focusing specifically on targeting our Tier 2 and 3 CSP audience. And that's why I'm involved in this survey. And let me just move on to the next slide. So what we're doing at Juniper is we're actively working with Tier 2 and 3 service providers. So we understand the changes that are needed to drive network automation adoption, and make it more of a compelling value prop for our Tier 2 and 3 customers. So what we did is we took a look at this problem, and we wanted to confirm that the conversations that we're continuing to have with our customers are indeed representative of the whole market in terms of the Tier 2s and Tier 3s. We wanted to understand their unique challenges and to see if any of their pain points were felt more acutely. So really, when we asked Sterling and Heavy Reading to do this independent survey, it was really to confirm a lot of the conversations that we had to see if we really understood our customers and those challenges and how to resolve those with our solutions. So the survey could be downloaded through the webinar tool, and I encourage you to do that. And it consists of the results of 217 respondents, and every single one of those respondents was working in the IP MPLS or IP integrated optical transport networks, and involved in either deploying, managing, or purchasing a solution for network automation, engineering, management, operations, or assurance. In addition, if you want to learn more about the Juniper portfolio for network automation, our Paragon Automation as a Service, there's a couple of videos as well that we've included in the resource section for you to view. Now, if you take a look at the types of outcomes that we've been discussing with our customers that we wanted to confirm, really they rest in 3 different groups. So the first is every customer, every CSP wants to be competitive. It's crucial to gain competitive advantage, to gain market share, and to create customer value. You want to be able to do this in a way that is fast, and that's where automation plays a role. So you're able with automation to innovate faster so that you could bring those differentiated services to market faster. And by differentiated services, it could be something like improving the net promoter score that reduces churn by delighting your customers with a superior quality of experience, for instance. As well, it's important from a business perspective to be able to contain costs and lower the CapEx and OpEx expenses, as well as lower the bar in terms of what is needed for expertise so that more can actually get actively involved in running the operations and using automation. Secondly, in terms of the people, to be able to be more productive is so important. How many times do we feel like we're doing repetitive tasks again and again in network operations, and you almost feel like you're turning into a robot? Well, that's where mistakes can happen. We can introduce errors when we're not totally able to focus because we're being pushed to do too much. So this is where automation can help us do more or do better with less. We're able to simplify and speed up those repetitive tasks by making them consistent and standardizing the processes to make them repeatable and reliable. And with that, we reduce the human errors, and also we're able to scale operations so that as there's more demand, you're not necessarily going to have to increase your staffing base. You're going to also be able to have more junior resources, people working alongside senior resources. And lastly, I talked about the idea of differentiation. And at Juniper, our true north is the experience first networking. So what we're doing with this in terms of automating that is we're giving the ability to not only improve the experience for you as an operator, but to also improve the experience for end users by increasing uptime and reliability. We're able to offer that high quality of experience that's differentiated, and we're able to do complex tasks using technologies like AI that humans couldn't possibly do. And that's going to be able to allow you to reduce your mean time to know and mean time to resolve, and do predictive analytics and that stuff so that you could optimize capacity on demand and make sure that your network is absolutely reliable and performing as best it can. So when you think about these three pillars, and Sterling is now, I'm going to hand it back to him to get into the amazing results that we've seen through the survey. Keep in mind these outcomes, and we're going to be able to see if the survey actually matches what we had originally thought. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Sterling. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin, for that introduction. So here is the agenda for the next 50 minutes. We'll go through the survey data. I'll do that, taking a look at general automation trends, timelines, then getting specifically into cloud-delivered automation. Then I'll hand things back to Kevin to cover the future of network automation for Tier 2, Tier 3s, getting into some of Juniper's learnings and recommendations for the market. I'll wrap up with conclusions, and hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes at the end for your questions. So the survey itself, I'll present very quickly here the demographics. You'll get the full report, you'll get the full demographics. The one thing, well, two things I'll draw your attention to here. As Kevin said, 217 operators globally is quite a big number. You can see the geographic mix. We cover all the regions in pretty good size to get a good sample from everywhere. The other important point is revenue. You can define Tier 2, Tier 3 lots of different ways. We define it by revenue. So we said under $1 billion in annual revenue is a Tier 2, Tier 3 company. Over $1 billion annual revenue we excluded from the survey. So this is different from most of our surveys in that there's no operators of over $1 billion. Of the under $1 billion, you can see the mix here, and we're able to parse the data and get some insights by different sizes within the Tier 2, Tier 3 community. But give it a concrete metric, we said, by revenue, $1 billion. Also on demographics, the types of providers. This is basically a telecom survey, so cloud is not really represented. We didn't want it really in this. Satellite as well. This is what you'd expect from a telco market, the mix of types of operators, and then you can see the job functions there. Let me get into some of the data and some of the key findings that we came across. So we asked right up front, to what extent do you agree with a set of statements? And we asked them these statements, and they could agree on a spectrum. What I did here is aggregated the combination of strongly agree and somewhat agree, which are the two top options, and looked at what are the statements that resonated most with the audience. 81% of CSPs believe automation is needed to remain competitive and increase customer value. That was the strongest statement of the mix, so quite powerful an endorsement for automation. 77% believe automation is needed to cope with an increase in scale of operational demand, so a big focus on operations. I called those two out here, but there's also several others resonated quite strongly. Actually, statistically tied, but percentage terms at 1% higher, 78%, saying that artificial intelligence for IT or AI and/or artificial intelligence is essential for the future of automation. So very strong resonance among the audience for using AI tools to improve it and help their automation. And also a statement which comes through elsewhere in the survey as well, is increasing complexity of the network is driving the need for automation. Where are network operators or this tier 2, tier 3 audience, where are they in terms of automation today? We would say they're at a fairly early stage. 82% of respondents are still operating with either a low level of automation or no, essentially no automation in the network. 52%, as you can see on the right, saying they have some network management tasks that have been semi-automated, so bits of automation in the network. 30%, which is a fairly large percentage, almost a third of the audience, are basically manual operations today. Command line interface and other legacy software tools, really kind of manually punching things into the network to manage it. So, we expect this to a large degree. We thought it would be fairly early stage. One other point I'll make is we do, just kind of scanning through the audience, we also have a number of large operators that tune into these webinars. A lot of this data will apply, and Kevin will agree, will apply to large operators as well. We do find that large operators are also at a fairly early stage of network automation. As I go through, I'll kind of try to point out where some of the similarities and differences are between this audience and the larger audience or more general audience. But there's a lot of similarities in the data, and also some very specific differences where tier 2 and tier 3s just have unique needs. So I'll try to point those out as we come across them. Primary drivers for network automation. In this survey, improving productivity stood out as the top driver for automation, 42% selecting that option. The highest on the list of the many options they were given. Other top ones include improving customer experience, increasing reliability and uptime, enhancing innovation. A couple points here I would make. Increasing reliability is very important across our surveys. We've seen that not just for automation, but we've seen that rising as an issue for network operators. So it's not a surprise really that they're going to look to automation to help with that kind of overarching mandate for their networks going forward. What we find in automation generally is there are kind of two major buckets that come to the top in terms of motivations, and it shows up here as well. You've got the internal or network focused things like improving productivity or improving network reliability. And then you have the more external customer centric types of benefits, things like, getting services out faster, or in this case, an ability to innovate and get, basically get innovations out to market faster. So it really covers a broad spectrum, and it's not one or the other, and it's not kind of one bucket really more than the other. It's really across the board. In terms of surprises from the survey, I was surprised a bit by mitigating skilled labor shortage resonated less than expected. That's down toward the bottom of the list. We hear so much about skilled labor shortages, and it's actually fairly consistent in surveys, so I don't think it's an outlier for automation, but it it doesn't, it's not a driver as maybe some people would think. It factors in, and we'll talk in a bit, but it's not a primary driver. The other one that was interesting, particularly in light of what I just talked about with AI ops itself, or AI as a driver, is not a driver for automation. It is actually not inconsistent with what I just showed a couple slides back. Though what we're seeing is that operators are viewing AI as a tool to achieve goals, not as an end itself. And I think this is quite consistent with that view. So operators are viewing AI as a tool. It's critical for automation. We just showed that automation itself is critical to improve productivity and customer experience, et cetera. But operators are not going to invest in AI for the sake of AI itself. There's a lot of hype, of course, in AI, but this is really, I think, the way the market really needs to look at how these are tools that play into other goals. The last one I'll present here before I hand things back to Kevin for a moment is challenges to network automation. Type of question we ask a lot in surveys. We asked here, what are the biggest challenges to achieving your network automation strategy? And the top two on the list for the tier 2, tier 3s are high costs or lack of budget, and complexity of integrating into existing systems. These are quite strong challenges, I would say. Also in the greater audience, I think much of this would apply to the tier 1s as well. Other specific factors that come to light, I think, that are very tier 2, 3 specific are a lot of things around staffing. Internal resistance to change was quite interesting to have, but also insufficient number of staff. So lack of staff is preventing them from achieving their automation goals, as well as lack of internal expertise. So these are all things related to staff. And actually, one of the things we did is we segmented the data a bit further and looked at what about the tier 3s and the smaller tier 2s? How did they answer this question? And we defined the smaller tier 2s as $200 million in annual revenue or less. And when we did that, the lack of staff, insufficient staff numbers actually rose to number 2 on the list, only behind lack of budget. So the smaller the operators go, the less budget they have and the less staff they have to achieve what they want to achieve with automation. But even in sort of resource heavy companies, the complexity is always there across the board, we're finding. With that, let me hand things back to Kevin for a moment to provide some additional insights, and then we'll move on to the cloud portion.
Yeah, thanks, Sterling. So I just wanted to comment. What's exciting about this survey is that really, if you look at the content, like what we're taking a look here specifically for tier 2 and tier 3s, there's never really been a survey in the industry that is focused on this segment. So firstly, that's really exciting. And just to comment on a couple of the things that you mentioned as drivers. So you did mention the whole idea of the job labor shortage is not surprisingly not ranking high. And to me, I think that might be because strategically, maybe management doesn't really identify that is the primary or highest primary driver to invest in automation. But the people that are doing the work actually know that it is a barrier that's blocking the adoption of automation. So I'd like to highlight that, when you take a look at some of the findings where you said that there was insufficient number of staff or a lack of expertise, and that's significant, around 26%. That's something to think about. As well, automation is coming with tons of challenges, as we've seen. The idea of higher costs and complexity and the ability for automation to be able to tackle that challenge is, I think, paramount. But what we're seeing is, because of these challenges, even with successful deployments, there's still a lot of delays. It's taking way too long. 68% of CSPs think that automation is not deployed fast enough. And when the automation is successful at being deployed, a lot of times, this is only 40% of the case, because 60% of do-it-yourself automation projects have been seen to fail. And that's from another third-party research that we've done a year ago. Something else of interest is that, we talk about it not being deployed fast enough. Well, in certain circumstances for do-it-yourself automation, it takes them over 3 months. We're talking about several months of work to be able to get these projects rolled out. 92% of respondents actually said that. And 51% said that the third-party automation projects that they take on take even longer, like double the time, 6 months or longer. So, these are the kind of challenges that are really preventing, I guess, tier 2s and tier 3s to be able to adopt automation and deploy it and take advantage of this to gain that competitive advantage, speed, the productivity, and everything that we've seen in terms of differentiating the quality of experience. So, with that, we wonder, is there a solution for that? And that's what we're here to talk to you about in the rest of the webinar, a solution that's going to be able to make things faster for you and be able to do things that meet your requirements at your pace. And with that, I'm going to switch over to Sterling, and let's cover the next chapter, because I think it'll be very enlightening.
Yeah, we'll get into the cloud. Just a couple comments on your insights here, which of course I agree with wholeheartedly. I also found it very interesting. The third-party automation projects take longer than do it yourself. So, you think of motivations for using a third party to speed things up. If that was the motivation, it doesn't seem to be working. The other point on labor is, we do these surveys and you get things that seem to be contradictory, and really what you got to do is spend a lot of time figuring out what's going on there. It's kind of easy to dismiss the data as bad, but it tends not to be the case. In this case, what the data has shown is labor shortage is not a driver to automate your network. It's not the primary driver. But when the operators have made the decision to automate, what they're quickly finding out is that they don't have enough people. So labor is becoming the problem when they make the decision to automate. And that showed through in the survey on several levels. So I would not dismiss that labor is not an issue in the market. It's just where it's showing up. And here it's operators. And even as they get quite far down the path of automation, they seem to be finding even more that the complexity and the lack of staff is a problem. Let's dive into the cloud here, which was quite one of the really interesting aspects of the survey. And Juniper was, without a doubt, one of the early movers in seeing this opportunity. So kudos to you guys for doing that. We've expanded out quite a bit in this survey based on some of the earlier findings in cloud. We asked operators here, how interested is your organization in adopting at least some automation applications delivered from the public cloud? And we did specify public cloud here to highlight that. And this was really, I would say, one of maybe the most surprising find from the study. 93% of operators surveyed are ready to adopt automation via the public cloud. Meaning, if you look at the pie chart, either likely to adopt, the 67%, or 26% who said they definitely will adopt. That's the 93%. Really surprising, a huge endorsement, I think, for the potential for software as a service for the tier 2, 3 operator audience. We haven't asked this question specifically, I think, to larger tier 1s, but so I don't have a good comparison, but clearly for this audience, very interested in public cloud model, not just cloud, but public. So quite strong. And there are challenges, and this is what we had expected would weigh in. If you think about the different challenges that people raise to cloud-based delivery of services, all of them, resonated here when we asked them what would block adoption. Concerns about customer data housed in the public cloud. Interesting also, though, that they're also concerned about customer data housed in a private cloud. Both of those were on the list. Network data traversing the internet without full encryption, so kind of getting into areas of the network where the operator is not in control of the data fully. encryption would factor in there, data sovereignty as well, leaving country or region or just areas where the data is not managed. So we would expect these things to weigh in, and they did. But I go back again to the fact that even though operators are fully aware of these issues, 93% said they're at least likely to adopt public cloud. So they're confident, I would say, that these challenges can be addressed. They'll look to suppliers, they'll look to their own internal, but they are clearly want to move forward in a way that they're aware of what's out there, right? I don't think it's a naive response that 93% say they want to invest. Different factors that would support moving to cloud-based automation. So we asked whether these different factors would support the use case to adopt network automation tools, cloud-based, and high availability guarantees versus compared, if delivered with higher availability guarantees compared to on-premise, 63%. So looking to cloud to deliver availability, reliability, essentially in excess of what they can do in an on-premise solution. I already mentioned up earlier that this reliability availability issue is really rising across the board in surveys. So they're seeing automation and cloud-based specifically could play a role there. We put some other things in there with very specific metric numbers, reducing OpEx costs by 50% or more, which is quite a big number, 53% saying, yeah, we would invest for that type of benefit. Total cost of ownership by 25% or more would invest, as well as greater security. So lots of reasons would support moves to cloud-based automation if the solutions could do, you know, what's stated here on the slide. So quite strong benefits that they look to achieve. The final bit before I hand things over to Kevin to kind of move into the solutions and kind of where we go from here based on the data. We asked about AI, a couple of questions on AI. Clearly, it's a hot trend in the industry. And we asked a very specific aspect of AI. Would you consider an AI-enabled software as a service solution also trained on other leading networks? We know that when data is trained more broadly, it can have better outcomes, more accuracy, higher performance, quicker to come to the right decision. There's clearly you know, risks to doing that. And so we asked specifically about AI trained on other networks. And we really found this was I would call it a qualified endorsement. 83% saying yes. It's not as strong a question as we asked about public AI. So we didn't, I mean, public cloud, we didn't say, are you planning to? We just said, would you consider this? This is really the first question we've asked along these lines. In a survey, 83% say they're at least willing, open to considering it. It doesn't mean they're absolutely committed, but they're open to the concept. Again, I'm not showing it on the slide, but we asked about, you know, different challenges to AI based on and trained on other networks, including their own data and comfortable levels, you know, how comfortable they would be doing that. You know, the percent that said they're against using their data to train other networks was not, it resonated. It was about a third saying that's a concern, but it wasn't the top by any means. So it's in the mix, but it's not a showstopper. Same thing with lack of trust in AI. It was at the bottom of the list. So operators are not saying they don't trust AI. They're not saying they're unwilling to put their data into the mix, and they're at least open to using AI that's trained on other networks. So quite, you know, fairly strong given the early stage. I think this is an area that we will certainly investigate more, and some strong opportunities for not just SaaS-based, but also bringing in AI as well. With that, let me hand things back to Kevin to kind of talk through where we go from here.
Great, thanks, Sterling. So what we've seen, my takeaway from that is that, you know, 93% of CSPs are saying that they're likely to adopt this or definitely will adopt cloud delivered automation. That's really compelling. And all those risks, the issues that they had in terms of cloud are pretty much non-issues because, you know, the actual reward outweighs the risk. And a lot of the tier one cloud providers like AWS, Google Cloud, you know, Microsoft, right, Azure, they have a lot of these issues in terms of availability, security, and so forth taken care of. So, you know, I think that as we go forward, you know, this is really the vision for the future of network automation for tier two and tier threes. And likely, similarly, AI is going to play a critical role in terms of moving the needle to be able to do more with less and being able to do those things that are not humanly possible and giving you that edge for competitive advantage. And we believe that that technology needs to be delivered as the cloud to take advantage of all the training of other leading networks as well. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the future of network automation for tier two and tier three service providers. This is where I talk about Juniper's vision. And what I could say is that our vision is here today, here and now. We have our cloud delivered network automation offering called Juniper Paragon as a Service. And it's going to give you that better, faster, simpler way to achieve what we deem as our true north, experience first networking. And we do this through automation that is extremely intuitive. Your operators are going to be able to gain access to a simple user interface that's use case based so that they don't have to use a monolithic system and actually be inundated and overwhelmed with all these capabilities and features that they would never use. They're able to use exactly the use cases that they need to achieve the results that they want. In addition, I mentioned the AI-enabled part. So as we streamline the GUI, we're also offering that incredible insight that only artificial intelligence could help in terms of, you know, reducing the number of alarms and all that noise and honing in on urgent actions. Our Paragon automation solution is encapsulating a full breadth of use cases. Our vision is to be able to tackle everything from assurance and orchestration to network planning and optimization as well. And our system is deployed in the cloud, and it's based on state-of-the-art intent-based networking. It's experience-driven. It's fully cloud native. And it's fully open with APIs that you could use, and also integrated use cases where if you actually purchase multiple use cases, you know, they don't rest in silos. You're able to use those cross-functionally in order to achieve closed-loop automation. And that's all through our software as a service deployment. Let me talk a little bit more about that model. We're able to basically allow you to innovate faster and take on some of that financial risk by allowing you to pay as you grow. It's a model that works in your favor. So the idea is that we're able to allow you to pay only for the use cases that you need. And we're also offering a free starter kit. So we're going to bundle this free with our hardware initially, so that you're able to just pay for what you're going to use. And we're finding that this model is very attractive for our customers, more attractive than, you know, the perpetual license model of on-prem deployments, because it's subscription based. Now that free offer starter kit does come with certain terms and conditions, but I encourage you to actually talk to your Juniper representative about that. I think in a nutshell, Paragon as a service delivers all those values that I talked about in terms of delivering, you know, that continuous innovation, faster innovation, being able to allow you to provide value for your customers, being able to give you more productivity, being able to allow you to differentiate your services through higher quality. And, you know, I mentioned it's use case based, and I'm going to talk a little bit later on about specific use cases that we've deployed, that we have in our cloud instance today. I mentioned AI enabled and how that is going to make the difference in terms of reducing the noise in the network and being able to predict things before they happen so that you could proactively resolve them. It's able for you to, you know, look at, the sea of data and be able to correlate down to just the urgent actions that need to be taken. And it also provides you with a way to be more intelligent about, the problems that you prioritize. It also, Paragon gives you that easy button as operations. We have for field engineers a phone app that guides them through device onboarding that's extremely intuitive and easy to use, for example. And I encourage you to take a look at the videos that I have added through heavy reading in the resource panel. The first one is on our cloud delivered automation, and specifically that phone app device onboarding use case that's quite compelling. And secondly, a full demo that I've given at Mobile World Congress on all the use cases that we have available today. Now, if you take a look at why cloud, well, firstly, it lowers your cost. We found through other third-party research that it yields a 40% cost reduction, because you don't have all the overheads. You don't have to buy all the servers and all that hardware that you would have to procure and put through your IT department. All that red tape is eliminated because we're taking that problem away from you. We manage and maintain all our servers and all the software licenses, in our cloud instance. So you're able to also gain agility. You're able to actually lower costs by being more agile, to be able to not have all that, continuous development where you're going to have to validate that features work, every so many months and stuff, because every week we introduce new upgrades and capabilities and features to our existing use cases. And that's going to help you lower the cost barrier because you're going to be able to have immediate access. And secondly, we're able to accelerate that time to market. We found through this third-party research that 50% reductions in deployment times were seen for cloud-delivered automation for the first time you deploy the platform, as well as 70% faster new use case deployment. And that's because it's just so simple. You're basically having a subscription. And in addition to accelerating time to deployment, it's just incredibly easy. We're giving you that easy button so that operators are able to be more productive and deliver results faster. At the end of the day, it's all about unleashing that operational efficiency, being able to do more with less, being able to solve the right problems, being able to detect issues that humans might miss, and reducing that mean time to know so that you could diagnose root cause faster and improve and impact a positive customer experience. So this is, in a nutshell, what our Paragon Automation as a Service offering has to deliver to you. Let me talk a little bit more about lowering the risks and AI. So we've seen through the survey, and I'll reiterate, that 93% of CSPs are ready today to be able to actually adopt cloud-delivered network automation from the public cloud, even given the risks that we had outlined. 83% would consider an AI-enabled solution, which is trained on other leading networks that's cloud-delivered. So we're really, raising the bar in terms of, mitigating risks and delivering a solution where you could take advantage immediately. And we're doing so in a way, just to remind you of what I said before, that's pay as you grow. So, you only pay for the use cases that you need. It's bundled for free with our hardware, so you have an easy way to get started. And, it's a cheaper solution than the perpetual on-prem deployments because you're going to only pay for what you need to meet your requirements. So it lowers your total cost of operations. Now, let me talk to you about what's here now and available today in our initial release of Paragon Automation as a Service. So there's 3 use cases that we've delivered, and this is just the start. The first is device lifecycle management, which includes onboarding. And again, I encourage you to watch the video in the resource panel. And that really will deliver devices extremely fast so that you can lower the time that it takes to roll out your services. With network with network observability, you're going to gain unprecedented insights across devices, the network, and services. And with network trust, this is a security capability that's going to allow you to gain integrity, confidence in the network, so that you could ensure that you have integrity and you are compliant. So I'll tell you a little bit about why each one of these use cases matters now. So, we've talked to our customers in the past about device onboarding, and they've said to us many times that it's actually quite a cumbersome process. When they send field technicians out to, do their jobs on site, it takes maybe 2 to 7 days per device. And these, people have to be highly trained, and they use manuals. There's a lot of work involved to plan these deployments out. And even with that, all that work and the expertise, there's still human errors that happen, and they have to work and sometimes debug issues with the network operations center. And they have to use CLI, which is a very manual, cumbersome approach too, that we know is notoriously error prone. In addition, there's unsafe practices for security, like using USBs, and writing down notes that are of IP addresses and stuff like that, maybe on Post-it notes, or it's just not a very, secure process when we're doing these type of activities. And lastly, we have features that automate, such as ZTP, zero touch provisioning. But the problem is that it stops there. It doesn't actually, validate that the service is working the way that was intended. And that leads to more truck rolls. So with Paragon as a service, what we're doing is we found that we're reducing that device deployment time down from those days to 10 to 30 minutes per device. It's a dramatic savings. In addition, everything is self-guided. There's no need for training because it's completely intuitive. You have an application on your phone that is, accessed in the cloud that's completely in sync with what the network operations center sees in their Paragon desktop instance. So everything's coordinated. You're able to basically get a self-guided way of which cables to plug in where. And after everything is done and everything's validated, then you're safe to know that you don't have to return the site because everything's been tested. It's fully automated. There's no errors. It's safe because you don't have to use USBs. So it is the way that we think that device onboarding needs to be reimagined. So the next use case that I wanted to talk to you about is network monitoring. So in the past, I had mentioned this before, operators are overwhelmed by a sea of networking data, events, alarms, and it's overwhelming. A lot of these systems that we've used in the past have, thousands of critical alarms in bigger organizations and major alarms. How do you know, what is truly the urgent action to be taken? You really don't, and it takes long to figure that out. And it's focused mainly on devices and not services in the network, and many times it's just information overload. And when you do fix things, it rests upon scripts and do-it-yourself techniques for monitoring, which you really need to be trained for. You have to have a high skill level to do. And even with this, there's still a lot of issues that are being missed. So where we think with Paragon as a service, we're going to change the model to have a brighter future for automation is by offering network observability. And not only network observability for devices, but for the network and services as well. It's going to allow you to synthesize all that data and focus on the urgent actions that you need to take. So instead of thousands of critical alarms, you're going to know exactly the few alarms that you're going to need to investigate further. In addition, we're reducing a lot of the noise through that AI and the analytics. We're able to also predict things that might be happening proactively so that you could address capacity concerns and issues of misconfigurations ahead of time. And all of this is designed in such a way that even the most junior NOC staff can be able to participate because a low level of skill is required. So in this model, we're going to make sure that you don't miss those issues that it took so long to investigate before, because we're giving you immediate insights into the problem so that you could address things quickly and even proactively. And lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about network security. And it's a big problem in the industry in terms of, especially as we move to data center, interconnect, and so forth. Security is an issue. We want to make sure that our devices are not vulnerable to DDoS attacks, and we want to make sure that they're compliant. A lot of times there's devices out there that we don't know that we could trust. How do you know if you could trust it? It could be tampered with before it arrives on site. There's been cases where there's been fake devices or fake components. Sometimes the device might be shipped with the wrong firmware that is going to introduce vulnerabilities. Sometimes the hardware is end of life, or the software is end of life, and that could introduce vulnerabilities as well. So it's really important to be able to actually get more compliant in order to prevent, these malicious attacks from these, suspect entities. So that's why in Paragon as a Service, we have fully integrated into all our use cases this network trust and compliance use case. And the first thing we've created as part of our hardware, our JunoOS Evo, is to introduce zero trust security as part of our TPM 2.0 chip. And that chip cryptographically is signed and is able to validate that the hardware that you have is actually indeed genuine Juniper hardware. In addition, through Paragon as a Service, you're able to do secure ZTP, as well as you understand your hardware and software to make sure that it is the right load. You're able to know that it's not end of life and confirm trust. And we do this compliance checking on a continual basis, and we're benchmarking against industry standards such as the Center for Internet Security. And all in all, this measures the trust continuously and allows you to see the trend if it's improving, so that also you could gain recommendations on how to improve this trust. And we don't stop at just ZTP. We're able to actually extend that to be able to validate not only the integrity and trust of your network, but also that it performs to what you had expected. And with that, those are the three use cases that we've delivered so far. And we have way more to come, including active assurance, intent-based service provisioning, and more. So I encourage you to take a look at our demos that we have in the resource panel. It'll give you even more detail and a walkthrough through the GUI, so you can see exactly this product in action right from the cloud. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sterling Perrin to talk a little bit about our concluding remarks.
Yes, let me wrap up. I'll wrap up quick. We got a lot of questions in, which is great. And I don't want to lose out on those. We'll get to as many as we can, but yeah, quick summary here. Just to summarize the highlights from the study. Tier 2, 3 operators, as we've shown, are at an early stage of automation, but I think the data shows that the interest level is quite high, driven by a number of things. When we look at the challenge, it's the high costs. For the Tier 2, Tier 3s, it's the high costs of implementation as well as the complexity of integration remaining the top challenge. Not surprisingly, we've got at least 2 questions came in around integration, so we'll get to those in a second. Staffing issues are front and center, not as a driver for automation, but when you make a decision to automate, how to move forward, staff quickly becomes an issue among the smaller operators, as well as budget, so that those tend to be quite strong. We did show there's a lot of interest, tremendous interest actually, in public cloud-based automation as an option, and as Kevin outlined, can address a number of issues that Tier 2, 3 operators are running into. So a lot of opportunity there. And then, as we touched on, AI, and specifically AI trained on other networks, is an emerging opportunity that we certainly wouldn't discount at this stage. As the operators are showing, they certainly want to learn more about what can be done there. With that, let me jump right into the questions. If we don't get to all of them, and I don't think we will, Juniper will be able to follow up one-on-one individually post-show. They'll get a list of the questions, and I'm sure some of them are quite product specific, so they'll, I'm sure, want to get in touch. Kevin, the first one, and a question that I also have myself. So we talk about public cloud delivery of automation applications. Somebody is asking about providing the same solution for customers that want to deploy in their own private cloud. And so actually, and I would add to that, you have public cloud, you have private cloud, and then you have traditional. Can you just kind of talk through how the automation applications will cut across those three major options?
Yeah, definitely. So what Juniper is developing with their Paragon automation, it's based on a common source for both our cloud delivered and SaaS options. And before that, we also have on-prem applications that continue to be, used in the field and that we're selling today. So that's not going away. But where we're moving to, where the future is the cloud. So what we're doing is we're going to have that SaaS cloud delivered option, as well as an on-prem self-hosted option where they're going to have their own private cloud. And although the on-prem solution might differ for commercial reasons, we're trying to keep those in sync. Yeah. And another thing I could say is that, in both cases, the intention is to support multi-vendor networks, not just Juniper. And for Paragon, it's just like the applications we've had before that were multi-vendor, right? We're continuing to do that. We've just started with the Juniper Cloud Metro, and we're going to be expanding to, other parts of the network as well. We're going to offer that irrespective of whether it's delivered as the SaaS option or the on-prem deployment option. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we're still getting questions in. Let me get right to one of them. It's a short question, but it definitely gets into the challenges of integration. So I wanted to at least start the discussion here. Somebody's asking specifically, how do I integrate my existing BSS system with your service? And if you want to talk more broadly about integration, that's fine, but this is specific to their BSS.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for any BSS or OSS system, we have a northbound interface that's fully open. So it really is, the traditional model, even with on-prem, we're able to point to that. And, we have a full Postman collection. You're able to actually issue, restful requests down, and you're able to basically get notifications. It's exactly the same mechanisms that, are standard in the industry today. You're going to be able to use those. So, it's not really something that is going to be outside of the norm for what you do today.
Okay, let me kind of combine two because they get at kind of also around integration. But so one question is, will Juniper provide the same? Oh no, that's the wrong one. Where the heck did it go? Yeah, here it is. Will Juniper support multi-vendor equipment for the SaaS solution? And then combined with that, somebody made some comments which might kind of inform the discussion here. Given the findings that integration costs are one of the most significant barriers, do you think the market is always going to lean towards pre-integrated viewer/single vendor solutions? So I'm just curious, you talked about a multi-vendor, but how do you see multi-vendor, and do you see some of these challenges pushing to single vendor, and how does that affect Juniper?
We've noticed specifically in tier 2 and 3s that there's a lot of homogenistic networks where they do go with single vendor. A lot more scenarios than whereas that's the case than in tier 1s where they kind of have a dual vendor approach. But I do see that multi-vendor, we've seen it even in some of the largest networks where Paragon automation, the applications have been chosen to manage, Cisco and Nokia and other vendors, right? So it's not, outside of the realm of possibilities that, this is the way that a lot of the big providers are going today, to go with one single vendor for a solution for automation that can manage multi-vendor. Now, of course, there's always going to be some kind of intricate type of, configurations and things that, every vendor does. And that's where really the intent-based, device modeling, you need something that's model-based to be able to describe all the Yang models for that and so forth. So, these, single vendor systems are still able to work with multiple vendors, and where they can't do it, for instance, for optical, there's not a lot of standardization in terms of the interfaces for that, in terms of Yang and these kind of approaches. So what we could do there is actually integrate with other systems, and that totally makes sense. It continues to make sense going forward.
Yeah,
I hope
good point.
helps.
Yeah. Good point on some of the differences between the tier twos, smaller versus the larger. The smaller are just generally historically more inclined to go single vendor, but that's kind of as a, I don't know, a lowest common denominator, or just as it's the only way for them to go forward. I think as networks become more open and we talk about all the open APIs, it doesn't, they're single vendor because they have to. I think they would much prefer to be open. They just don't have the resources to do it.
It's that, and it's also, if you take a look at the findings from the survey, a lot of operators haven't actually adopted automation. We saw that massive statistic there, around 50%,
right,
that are still using the kind of semi-automated approach, and 30-something% were manual. So if they're just using CLI, it's a little bit different. But when they do evolve to automation, it totally makes sense to have a single vendor platform that basically is offering multi-vendor for all, so that you can converge and have consistency, I would say.
Yep, absolutely. A question for me, I'll take this one. And this related to the AI and data trained on other networks, data point I showed early on. Somebody asked, do you find that operators are able to, no, that's the wrong, these things keep moving. Would your audience also contribute their data to this collective training? We did ask that, I didn't show it, but we asked about the challenges on the next question after that one in the survey. And 35% said they were not willing to use their own data, which means that 65% were open to the idea of using their own data to train other networks, knowing that they're benefiting from the collective use of data from others. So yeah, there is a majority, in fact, about 2/3 saying they're willing to do that, even though it could be a concern for sure. We might have term for just one or two left. Which one do I want to grab? Yeah, this one is specific to Paragon automation. There's actually quite a few product-specific ones. Maybe we'll close out on this one. Is the Paragon automation requiring additional professional services customization, or is it ready to go out of the box? That's a good question. How much customization is needed when you're doing these cloud-based?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, because in the past with on-prem deployments, we found that there was, professional services activities that were needed more so. But with the cloud instance, we've designed things in a totally different model. That's we take away all the problems in terms of, you don't need to deploy servers, you don't need to install, you don't need to upgrade, right? So I would say that for the most part, all that deployment professional services is eliminated. And then secondly, because it's so intuitive and, cross-functionally end-to-end in terms of the use cases, I would say that you don't really need a lot of education. So where professional services comes in and offers, consulting and tutoring to try to onboard people into the system, I think that it really alleviates the need for all that expert training as well. Where I do see professional services playing a role is more on the integration front. So definitely, if you're going to be using REST APIs and doing development, a lot of tier 2s and 3s don't have organizations in their company that are specifically for development. They might want to go with a third party and so forth. We could take that problem from you, and you could hire Juniper for professional services to do that kind of activity as well. So
all right, excellent.
I hope that answers the question.
Good stuff. I think it did. Let's. We're at the top of the hour, so we'll close out here. There are more questions. Juniper, I'm sure will be happy to get back to everybody individually and address those. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Thanks for your great questions, and of course, thanks Kevin for your participation in this webinar and help throughout this project. I definitely agree. This was some interesting data. I'm glad we did it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Sterling. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
And thank you everyone for attending. And I just wanted to remind everyone to check out the links for the paper, download that, read it, and also check out the videos. There's a really great demo where you could get a walkthrough of the GUI. I think it's going to be very revealing.
All right, that will close it out. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.